Phase 3 of Marvel will begin in earnest with Captain America Civil War, and in order for a war to be taken seriously by its friends, there really needs to be a casualty or two. In the comic storyline of the same name, Civil War by Mark Millar, you had long-term Avenger Goliath falling victim to a Thor clone, and for this film to be even half as momentous as the comics, fans have to expect someone to join Quicksilver and Agent Coulson, sort of, in the pantheon of fallen heroes. Otherwise, it's really more of a civil disagreement. I'm Adam from Whatculture.com, and this is Captain America Civil War, Who Lives and Who Dies. Number 10, Ant-Man and Black Panther. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way first. Both the Anti and the Panther are slated to appear in Civil War, but unless Marvel are going very left field for Ant-Man 2 and a separate Black Panther movie, I'm going to hazard a guess that Scott Lang and T'Challa make it out of this one unscathed. It would be surprising, I'll say that. It would also be rubbish, but it would be surprising. Ant-Man and Black Panther will live. Number 9, New Avengers. The rest of the Scooby-Dooby crew, Scarlet Witch, the Falcon, War Machine and the Vision, aka the New Avengers, will all make an appearance in Civil War, and much like Ant-Man and Panther, are more than likely to walk out alive. After all, the ending of Age of Ultron framed the foursome of the next generation of heroes, ready to take the mantle when Iron Man and Thor finally bow out for good. But then again, they are definitely the B team, and you'd have to consider Don Cheadle a little more expendable than, say, Robert Downey Jr. Sorry, Don, you do good work. The Falcon fits the established African-American hero dies to raise a stakes formula from the comics, but it's more than likely that all four will make it to Infinity War.
And not one of us can do it without the others.
The New Avengers will live. Number 8, Thaddeus Ross. Thunderbolt Ross, the man with one of the best moustaches in comics, is making a long-delayed return to the Marvel movies after an 8-year absence. We last saw him in The Incredible Hulk, and not even the lead actor returned from that one, so his resurgence is a bit surprising. No doubt Ross will be one of the chief proponents for superhuman regulation, having seen firsthand what the Hulk can get up to when he's throwing a piss fit. In terms of his survival, Ross has always been known as something of a dick, so it wouldn't break anyone's heart if he was lost as part of collateral damage, but it would definitely up the stakes for him to bite the dust. Perhaps he goes crazy with paranoia and storms into the line of fire. It's possible he could be setting up a run as the Red Hulk, but that seems a little too mad even for the MCU, and considering that Marvel currently have no plans for another Hulk movie, Ross's future involvement in the franchise isn't likely, so let's go out on a limb and make Ross our first casualty. Thunderbolt Ross will die. Ooh. Number 7, Crossbones. Frank Grillo will be reprising his role of Brock Rumlow for the film, and he will finally assume the mantle of evil mercenary Crossbones. However, what some people might not know is that Grillo's time on set was only about a week, which means that he's likely only set to appear in one scene, an attack on an African city, probably Wakanda. It's the New York of Marvel's Africa. Now, this scene is rumoured to be the one that kicks off the need for superhuman regulation, so it's more likely than not that Crossbones will meet his end here, either as an example of superhero justice taken too far, or perhaps perishing in a huge explosion big enough to warrant the government getting up in the Avengers' grill. Crossbones will die. Number 6, Baron Zemo. Who doesn't love a mad Nazi? We know that Marvel sure does. Baron Zemo is certainly a few sandwiches short of a Reichstag, and in yet another piece of wunderbar casting, it's going to be played by Daniel Bruhl, who's brilliant. While Marvel do have a little bit of history in killing off its villains after a single showing, rest in peace all of you guys, having Baron Zemo survive would probably be more useful for Marvel at this stage. After all, if you ever wanted to do a Thunderbolts movie, hint hint, Baron Zemo is integral to the history of that villains fighting for good comic. And yes, I know Ross's Red Hulk is also a Thunderbolt, but I just think that the Red Hulk is too silly for movies. There, I said it. Baron Zemo will live. Number 5, Black Widow. The Avengers movies do like to heavily foreshadow a death without being able to pull the trigger, don't they? In Marvel's Avengers Assemble, the crosshairs of fate seem to be lining up on Black Widow. She was a perennial supporting player, and the script seems to be playing up the whole redemption angle.
I made a name for myself.
She's done some terrible things in her past and is just trying to get the red off her ledger, and what better way to do that than the sacrifice play? Will she die this time around? Well, it would certainly be devastating to Cap, but it would be very bad PR for Marvel to fridge a major female star without giving her a solo movie in order to provide man paint for their lead. Retirement rather than death seems rather more likely for the rapacious Russian. Black Widow will live.
It's efficient.
Number 4, Hawkeye. Every film, everyone waits for Hawkeye to die. After all, he has a solid history of dying in the comics, and his special powers are bow and arrow. But after Age of Ultron, Hawkeye almost seems the most untouchable out of all of them. Joss Whedon spent the entirety of that film erecting a giant neon sign saying, "Hawkeye will die."
I think you missed that.
He brushed with death in the first scene, he's never had his own movie, they introduced his family, including a pregnant wife, mentioned retirement, he went back to try and save a kid. That's a full row of numbers in death foreshadowing cliche bingo right there. Considering that the Reaper ended up claiming Quicksilver instead, it almost seems like a sly joke on behalf of the filmmakers, especially with that last bird-eye shot of the two of them lying down on the S.H.I.E.L.D. transport. You thought it was going to be this guy, but instead, it's this guy. Gotcha. With all that, it seems like Hawkeye is protected by the gods, so now is the perfect time to do him in.
When I see those guys, those gods.
You don't think they need me?
In many ways, he's the most human of all the Avengers, with the heart and humour that a lot of his godlike colleagues can't manage, and if you're looking for a moment of pure emotional devastation, no one's death would be an arrow to the heart quite like Hawkeye's. Hawkeye will die. Number 3, the Winter Soldier. Unlikely. I mean, he's already died once. If we're going to take inspiration from the comics, then it would be fairly obvious copters that Winter Soldier ain't going nowhere. For a while in the comics, when Captain America died during the aftermath of Civil War, isn't that interesting? The Winter Soldier, completing his redemption, takes on the mantle of his former mentor, becoming the new Cap. After all, Chris Evans has been wanting to retire from acting for a while, so look for Sebastian Stan, with his 9-picture deal, to become a huge part of the MCU in coming years. The Winter Soldier will live. Number 2, Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. is the guy that started all of this. Before Iron Man came out in 2008, old Bullethead was a hero unknown to most of the general public. Now he's the biggest component of the biggest movie house in the world. But he's not going to be around forever, and if RDJ is looking for an out, there's no better time than now. Cap versus Iron Man, with lives in the balance. In the comics, Iron Man found himself on the wrong side of the war, morally, and if that's the case here too, what better way to redeem himself than falling in battle? It would be a shattering loss and send an emphatic message to the world that ultimately no hero is safe, which is exactly the kind of shake-up needed before Infinity War. It would also save Marvel quite a bit of money in the form of Robert Downey Jr.'s burgeoning salary.
Well done.
But is it just too much of a financial risk to lose Iron Man? Now, Marvel has to assume that for most casual fans, Downey Jr. is the biggest draw in the Avengers, and burying him for good could be interpreted by Marvel's top brass as burying the cash cow.
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Now, perhaps Iron Man will be forced instead to live on with his dark choices.
Are you? On our side.
It's a very tough choice, but Iron Man will live. Number 1, Captain America. 2 words, fallen son. The comic angle by Ed Brubaker that killed off Captain America at the end of Civil War. He ends up assassinated by a brainwashed Sharon Carter, who's been introduced to the MCU in the form of Emily Van Camp, before drifting through time and space before being eventually resurrected, as all comic book heroes inevitably are. It would be a hell of a move for Marvel to end Civil War with a fallen Cap, but can you actually see it happening? Putting aside the fact that Chris Evans is contracted with Marvel for Infinity War, can you picture Captain America dying? It would be bold and exciting from a storyline perspective, and people would be anxious to see how the new Avengers could hope to survive, but would it turn off the public en masse? Probably, and it would likely end with Cap being resurrected via cosmic magic, via the Infinity Stones, which is rubbish. Such a thing has precedence in the comics, but it seems a bit too hokey for the filmic universe. Captain America will live. And those are our predictions. What do you think? Tell us about it in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and you can even follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from Whatculture.com, and I'll see you soon.